This video will demonstrate how to reload shot shells on the Lee Loadall 2 press. Loading shotgun shells is physically easier and less precise, but more complex than loading metallic cartridges. A good book on this subject is Reloading for Shotgunners from DBI Books by Kurt Fackler and M.L. McPherson, which will tell and show you everything you need to know. The Shot Shell Reloading Handbook from Lyman is also a good choice. There are other methods and other tools. This video shows only my personal method specific to the Lee Loadall 2. This video presumes you have already asked and answered the question of why you are reloading shot shells, for economics, for the challenge or enjoyment, or to tailor a specific load not available from factories. This is the Lee Loadall 2, one of the simplest and least expensive shot shell reloading presses. At the time of this recording, it's about $60 delivered from any of the big internet suppliers. It is available in 12, 16, and 20 gauge. The press is built for a specific gauge and for 2 3/4 inch standard shells. It can be adjusted to handle 3-inch magnums, but more finesse is required to operate it that way. Lee also sells a conversion kit to change from one gauge to another, but it's nearly half the price of a new press, and then you have to take it apart and reassemble it. Since the press is so inexpensive, it might make more sense to purchase 2 complete loadalls if you're loading more than one gauge. The press comes almost entirely assembled with instructions. You can find used loadalls at gun shows and download the instructions, but it's so cheap for a brand new press, I suggest just ordering one, then you know it has all the stuff with it the first time. To reload shot shells, first you need empty hulls. If there's a Trap Skeet Sporting Clays club near you, you should be able to beg a bucketful. Some of the big sporting goods stores or chains will carry sacks of once-fired hulls, and they can also be found at gun shows. Now you must inspect the hulls. Some will have been stepped on, others left in the weather too long and corroded. The brass bases are often brass-plated steel, which of course will rust. Also look at the mouths for cracks, splits, and holes, especially where the crimp is folded. Be ruthless and discard any hull that isn't intact. You'll need to sort the hulls by brand and type. In the books mentioned above, and in the shot shell section of other load manuals, such as those provided free by most powder makers, you'll note that the load data is arranged by hull type. Different brands and types of hulls will have different internal volumes, which will affect chamber pressure. You must take care to follow the recipes and warnings in the load books. Unlike metallic cartridge cases, there's little preparation required for shotgun hulls. If they're reasonably clean, you can put them right into the press and start working. You also need powder, primers, wads, and a shot. Examine the load books to find a load that meets your needs, and buy your components to make that load. Some sporting goods stores sell 25-pound sacks of birdshot. The most common sizes are number 6, number 7.5, or number 8. If you're loading for action shooting competition, check for the size of shot required by the competition's rules before purchase. Buckshot is available in several sizes in a 5-pound box by Hornady, among other sources. Lee recently introduced an 18-cavity buckshot mold in 3 sizes, so you can cast your own. All these components can be ordered from the internet, though shipping costs may be prohibitive for shot due to weight. The Loadall 2 is nearly ready to use out of the box. If you're using birdshot, it makes sense to use the shot reservoir, but if you have a separate powder measure like the RCBS Uniflow, you'll get better results with less spilled powder than with the Loadall's powder reservoir. For either reservoir, if you use it, you must install the proper bushing. The instructions and charts included with a new Loadall, or downloadable free from Lee, will describe which powder bushing is appropriate for how many grains of which powder, and which shot bushing for what weight of what size shot. After installing the bushings, you'll have to mount the press on something. It comes with the bolts and toothed nuts to mount the press on a piece of wood. I got a piece of scrap wood from the free wood bin of a nearby builder's supply store, and drilled the necessary holes with my Dremel. Here you see the Loadall 2 bolted to that wood and in turn C-clamped to a reloading table. I found that I don't need as sturdy a platform for making shot shells as I do for metallic cartridges. Here again is my dangerously disorganized reloading table of doom. I have here the Loadall 2 set up with a shot bushing installed, powder bushing installed just so there's not an empty space in the slider bar. I'm not using the built-in powder reservoir, I'm using my RCBS Uniflow instead. I'll be using unique powder. a popular powder for many handgun and shotgun cartridges. The first step is to deprime and resize the spent hull. Take the spent hull, slip the sizing ring over it. The groove on one end goes on top, and you'll see a cutout on the bottom for clearance for the rim. This then goes in here. Note the depriming pin here sticking out. Slip that in there. Well, make sure it goes over, like so. Run the handle all the way down. That will resize the metal base and punch out the spent primer. The next step is to install a new primer. For this first test batch here, I'm using CCI 209 primers because I happen to have some. Usually I prefer Winchester primers. They've worked perfectly in every metallic cartridge I've ever loaded with them. The primer goes with the base down, obviously, into this little pocket right here. You can get a primer feed add-on, which slips into the slot in the back here, but Lee's primer feed systems are notoriously unreliable. I've never used them for metallic cartridges. These bigger 209s are easier to handle though, so it might work better here. I just haven't got around to ordering one. Move the sized shot shell, with the sizing ring still stuck on it, to the second station. Put this rod down the hull mouth. Press down all the way. Well, no. You want to be careful here. It's possible to press too hard and dish in the base of the hull. So, you gently push down until the sizing ring pops off. Press down gently by feel. It's trial and error. You might wreck a few holes doing this, until the new primer is seated. Pull that off, remove the sizing ring, and check that the new primer is in fact seated, which it is. Next, you put the hull here, with the mouth under the wad guide fingers. Now, the way Lee designed this, you would run this down so this spout goes into the case. You would have the slider bar on the left already. You would then move the slider bar to the right, and it would dispense powder from the powder reservoir through the bushing into the hull, but I'm not using their powder reservoir. I'm not using the powder reservoir. I'm using my old RCBS Uniflow, which is set for 19 grains of unique. Simply insert the powder measure spout into the case mouth, the hull mouth, swing, drop, there's powder in there. Then you put the mouth under those wad fingers. The next step is to insert the wad. I am using the Winchester WAA-12, which is a very common wad. Most stores will carry it. The wad is inserted over the rod into the wad finger guide, and it is trial and error to figure out how far down to push the wad to get a good crimp. Generally, with the tip of the wad pedals just past the fold is about where you want to go. Some wads will stick better in the hull than others. They'll make a tighter fit, they'll have more friction. Push that down just a little more. That should be about right. Now, with that spout in there, move the charge bar to the left and it will dispense shot. Since I'm not using the powder reservoir, I'll move the charge bar back to the right. And you can see the shot in there. Probably I'll have to put the wad down a little further. The next step is to move it to the crimp station. There are two, one for 6 pedals and one for 8. You want to draw a line between two corners of the fold, two outer corners, and that line should be parallel to the front of the press. The one in front does 8 folds, the one in back does 6. There's the pre-crimp, then you put it into this shell holder thing and do the finish crimp. Hey, look at that, it's a shot shell. That's about it. And here's what it looks like at full speed. Hull, sizing ring, size and D prime, primer, remove the sizing ring, charge with powder, under the wad fingers, insert wad, charge with shot. This one's using a 6-fold crimp, goes in the back. Pre-crimp, finish crimp, and repeat.